Recent data shows North Korea is advancing its submarine-launched ballistic missile program. The U.S.-based North Korea watchdog 38 North says the regime has almost completed a second submersible ballistic missile test stand barge at its Nampo Navy shipyard. This is based on analysis of commercial satellite imagery from 3 separate days in mid-November. The barge will help facilitate broader testing since it allows for underwater missile launches outside of submarines, allowing North Korea's fleet to obtain ICBM capabilities. They'll pose a serious threat since they're more difficult to target and detect compared to land-based missiles.
North Korea's missile launch on Wednesday now confirmed to be their most sophisticated to date. Defense officials from the U.S. and South Korea confirming the missile was an ICBM, capable of delivering a 2,200-pound payload to virtually any point in the continental United States.
If it were fired at a normal angle, it would be capable of flying over 8,000 miles. That means it can reach Washington, D.C.
And on Friday, signs emerged that another test could be underway soon with the construction of a new launch pad. It's a big step forward for the North Korean military, which has pressed on with its missile and nuclear programs despite the Trump administration's attempts to isolate the North diplomatically and economically.
That maximum pressure campaign is our top national security priority here. Nations continue to get on board and support that.
If North Korea does launch against the U.S., one likely target is Hawaii. Officials there taking the threat seriously, testing a newly revamped air raid warning system on Friday. Tourists and residents say they think it's a good idea, given the unpredictability of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
He seems somewhat unstable, and because of that, I think precautions should be taken.
It's concerning. I feel a little bit like it's out of my hands.
South Korean officials say at the rate that they are progressing, North Korea could have a viable arsenal of nuclear missiles ready by the middle of next year.
Now, North Korea launched its most powerful missile to date last month, and according to a U.S. arms expert, that missile might have the ability to use decoys to help it evade the THAAD missile defense system, thus posing an even greater risk to the rest of the world. Park So-yeon reports.
North Korea's latest missile launch last month was the most powerful to date, demonstrating that North Korea has the technology to reach anywhere in the United States. But as well as that, North Korea's Hwasong-15 missile could have the capability to carry decoys due to its increased size. According to Michael Ellman, a senior fellow for missile defense at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the enlarged Hwasong-15 has a warhead and a second-stage propeller, which is considerably bigger than the previously tested missile, leading to concerns that the Hwasong-15 could carry simple decoys to deceive the U.S. missile defense system. However, Ellman further claimed that it was uncertain whether North Korea tested its ability to avoid the THAAD defense system in the recent missile test. He emphasized that Hwasong-15 was not a modified version of Hwasong-14, but a completely new weapon. The U.S. missile defense system consists of a complex system of radar stations and interceptors. It's supposed to detect an ICBM as soon as it's launched, but it isn't always able to detect every missile and fails to destroy every target missile during tests. In response to the North's latest test, the United States is searching for a new site along the west coast of the U.S. to deploy an extra THAAD battery.
Dana, yeah, it looks like North Korea might be getting ready to start even more trouble. As you noted, Fox News has obtained new satellite imagery taken just a couple of days ago to the northwest of the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, and it seems to show, yes, the construction of another launch site not far from where an ICBM took off in July of this year. This, as South Korean officials today confirmed what we have been reporting for a couple days now, that this week's missile had a potential range of 8,100 miles, putting all of the U.S. mainland in its reach, potentially with a nuclear warhead. This launch celebrated in a very orchestrated way in Pyongyang today. Also, officials speaking to the masses gathered, saying that North Korea was now a, quote, nuclear force, Dana.
All right. So, Greg, I have a question about what Russia is saying about U.S. policy towards North Korea, because I thought it was fairly eye-opening when I saw those headlines this morning.
Absolutely. Very strong stuff. Remember, after the launch a couple of days ago, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, in the Security Council said that North Korea would in fact be destroyed by the U.S. and even tried to start a war. Well, we heard from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov today. He branded those words a, quote, bloodthirsty tirade, adding that the U.S. was playing with fire and making a big mistake to talk in this way. He said that Russia would be happy to solve this whole thing peacefully. I think we all would. Back to you, Dan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's China. And until we begin to do that in earnest, where they are affecting their economy, where they're affecting their government, where they're affecting their banking industry, we still have lots of economic and measures that we can employ along with diplomacy to be able to head off any kind of military action. On one hand, while we need to prepare it, we need to put systems in place, whether it's THAAD or the Aegis system ashore or others around the world, to be prepared for this threat when it continues to grow. On the other hand, we need to have a lot more pressure put on China because they're the ones causing this.
You know, Commander, I'm wondering if the Chinese can. Now, I'm sure they were given a heads up about this launch, this missile launch, before the North Koreans did it. Maybe not. But obviously they had sent a representative there, at least under the appearance of doing something. Maybe it was legitimate and heartfelt and sincere. But the North Koreans still did this. They had to know that would make the Chinese at least look to the world like fools. So can China even control this?
We haven't seen China apply any pressure yet. They have done things on the margin. Even today, they're barely complying, if they're complying at all, with any of the sanctions that have been put in place. Russia is aiding and abetting it as well. So I think that we need to start in earnest and drawing up what I've said for months, Neil, and that is a comprehensive, across-the-government plan that is going to begin to lay out sanctions that China is going to feel that it's going to hit them right where it hurts, in their economy. Yes, it is going to affect our economy. Yes, our markets are going to take a hit. But now it's the president's responsibility to talk to the American people and say, this is why this is a threat. This is the danger it poses to our nation. This is what we are going to do to counter it. These are the effects we're going to feel. But as a nation, we have to do it because the consequences of it cannot be measured in a detonation here at home.
Not a game changer in the sense that we've seen this coming. We've watched the evolution of their program. What it is yet another new stage. We have seen the North Koreans develop their ICBMs, their nuclear weapons. Now they're extending the range. They're living up to what they keep saying, which is we are going to hit anywhere we want to in the United States.
So when you say the stages, it sounds like they've got the missile and they've got the nuclear warhead, but they have yet to put them together and deliver them to the United States. Is that right?
That's right. So this test, it looks like, was of something around 150 kilograms. That would put it at the very low end of the size of a nuclear warhead. North Korea is probably not quite there yet. But given the pace of the development of both their missiles and their hydrogen bomb program, where we once thought maybe we had 5, maybe even 10 years, now we're probably looking at maybe 1, 2, or 3 years.
Which is just appalling and frightening, I would imagine, to most Americans hearing about this today. It's something that we imagine as being much farther off. So the idea that it's immediate reality is really horrifying.
Right now, you've got Hawaiians hearing the air raid sirens. The question is, are we going to start hearing that in Chicago and Washington and Denver?
So what provoked this test on Tuesday? We know Pyongyang likes to be very strategic about when they launch these missile tests. It's usually either in response to something or, a major event in the U.S. like a holiday or a preview to something. Were they sending a specific message here with the timing?
They were sending a couple of messages, possibly. One of them was, hey, we've behaved ourselves for 60 days, but don't forget we're here.
You're referencing the fact that they hadn't launched tests for a couple of months, right?
That's right.
There had kind of been radio silence.
Exactly. Another part could be the president's visit was during that period, and it is quite possible that various players, the Chinese, the Russians, et cetera, got them to be quiet for a period. But now that the president is back, that could well be the precipitating event to say, hey, you know what, I behaved myself, now it's your turn to go back to being afraid.
So it seems like the North Korea situation has sort of turned on a dime. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, President Trump returned from his tour and was touting a largely successful visit. He managed to rally our Asian allies in defiance of the North Korean nuclear threat. He claimed to have made some substantive progress on the nuclear issue. Was that not true, or have things just deteriorated rapidly?
No, I think that we need to take a couple of steps back and realize that the North Koreans are operating according to their schedule. And their schedule, as I said earlier, is to develop an ICBM and develop a nuclear warhead on top of that ICBM. I don't think anything anyone has done, not us, not the increased Chinese pressure, not South Korean and Japanese pressure, has really slowed that down, mostly because the North Koreans are isolated. They're not completely beholden to the Chinese or anyone else. And this message may actually have been even aimed at Beijing to say, you are not the boss of me. I might be willing to be quiet for a little bit, but at the end of the day, I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to test missiles.
A great reminder that they